Hello, everyone. Take this and the clicker. My name is Alyssa Pichardo. I am a master's student in the Urban Planning Department at Hunter College and also pursuing a GIS certification in the Geography Department. And I will be talking to you today about crowdsourcing bicycle and pedestrian data through the development and preliminary piloting of a counting and crowdsourcing application for Android phones. Walking us through, I'm going to introduce the client, the project, as well as discuss the development of the Android app itself and how that was done using open source tools, the initial piloting of data visualizations of this information, and then talking about the next steps for this summer and further development, as well as long-term opportunities in transportation planning in particular, and finally have a question and suggestion period at the end. So this project began last fall in a public participation and GIS course with Professor Lakshmi Ramasubramanian, and it was really a way to work with a nonprofit organization in creating an option for their volunteers to record traffic information, engage in transportation planning and transportation advocacy. So that's where this project is coming from. It takes much more of a community engagement approach as well as a look at transportation advocacy. And the app is simply a tallying app using Android App Inventor, which is out of MIT, a crowdsourced application. And the app geocodes data collection points, and from there, I've begun piloting data visualizations on the web so that I can get feedback from volunteers what they would like to see, how this data should be used. And then the client is Transportation Alternatives. So they are a local transportation advocacy organization in New York City. Many of you may have heard of them. They advocate for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit options and increasing the use of these modes within New York City. They have 1,500 active volunteers. When we talk about crowdsourcing, that's a large group of people that are actively engaged and involved in this process of developing transportation alternatives in New York City. And they complete traffic counts on a project-by-project basis, and the volunteers really are using simple spreadsheets, writing down, tallying information. They do the pedestrian intercept surveys. They go out and count how many bicycles are on 6th Avenue or 4th Avenue, wherever the project of interest is. And the Transportation Alternatives developed a neighborhood traffic monitoring toolkit, which uses just basic sheet entry information, and then that's processed through spreadsheet software. And what they really needed was a streamlined data collection process that allows all of their information to be held in one location, easily accessed, visualized, and rendered a little bit more quickly than keying in tally counts. And as you know, smartphones are enabled with GPS, as we've discussed so much today. So thinking about how GPS capabilities can streamline this data collection process, automatically georeference the data collection points, send this information to a web server where it can be stored in one location, and then on that back end, running, either downloading the information, the raw data, or rendering visualizations on the web so that people can participate, see the results, and become engaged in the process of data analysis and transportation planning. So I used open source tools, MIT's App Inventor, which originally was produced by Google and is now in beta support by MIT for an Android application, and Tableau Public, which is a free software that renders simple visualizations on the web, and you can download your spreadsheet into it and it'll update. So I'll talk more about those a bit. So developing the Android app using Android App Inventor was relatively easy. I'm not a programmer. I am simply a planner, and it was, while I'm tech savvy, it's really easy to use the modular blocks of codes for educators, non-programmers, creating something quick for development and piloting, and moving forward, taking this to the next level, working directly with an app inventor, app developer, and also volunteers to tailor the application to the community itself. So this is just a quick look at the application here. This is App Inventor's screen components, so you can add components such as form entry, GPS location sensors, pull this information in. It's really basic. There are so many tutorials and open source options for utilizing this. And from here, it's just a simple type in keyed in form, and then continue on to the counting screen from there. And the back end really looks at using modular blocks of code, pulling in the components and adding functionality to them. So click button functionality for the pedestrian counter, ped count button, adding an increment of 1 every time it's pressed and storing that information in a tiny web database that is then uploaded to the web, as well as calling latitude and longitude and simple time markers for when the count started, ended, and timestamps. This here is the information screen about the street. One of the concerns that's been discussed is the issue of the urban canyon effect. And so this is a way to have a simple entry of the street name, cross streets, so in the event that the GPS on someone's phone isn't phenomenal in some of these applications initially, we can at least go back and reference it. As well as simple information about one-way or two-way streets, where the person's standing for the count. Are they doing a screen line count by standing in the middle of the street, or are they looking at pedestrian or bicycle traffic at the intersection itself? Sorry about that. And then from there, going on to the simple add pedestrian, add bicycle screen. So this is a really quick way to tally. I was actually using it on 6th Avenue the other day. By just tapping a touchscreen device is much simpler than making a check mark, then going back and entering that information. So now when the tap functionality is applied, running that tally, it adds a count, and then from there that information can be uploaded and the user is taken back to the first screen. Eventually I would like to see the data uploaded and then render a visualization, send the user to a web visualization immediately afterwards so that they can see their progress, their work, and become more engaged and involved in transportation planning and data collection efforts. So data is currently stored on a personal web server using a PHP MySQL backend. There's a basic spreadsheet created for downloading. And this is where the integration really needs to happen over the summer, is simplifying the steps from going from the app to the web to visualization. And further integrating that with the data visualizations in the long run and developing them for users. On the data visualization end of things, Tableau Public was utilized. And really, Transportation Alternative staff said that they wanted to create more visuals than just a map. They wanted something that would have graphs, charts, more information. So right now there's a map that has graduated symbols, traffic counts per street over time, so you can see points in the winter and spring, and then also mode share, as expressed of pedestrian and bicycle only mode share. Other mode shares haven't been worked in yet, but that's a possibility in the future. And Tableau Public has an interactive interface, and this is just a way to pilot these initial visualizations for users before going back with them to further develop the dashboard. So I'm going to go to that right now and show you really quickly. So currently, as I said, there is a simple map with graduated symbols. Information about the mode of travel here is highlighted. Users can then choose to select different data points, can zoom in on different areas of the map. This information can also be shared via Twitter, Facebook, email, so that volunteers can then share it with other volunteers and those interested, email their community district members to say, hey, we have a lot of bicycle and pedestrians using the street. What can we do to make things safer and better for them? And then also looking at trends over time and being able to select certain street segments, looking at things over different times with different data points, and then the mode share expressed just simply and basically as a higher number of pedestrian or bicyclists. So this is just all piloting this information, thinking about whether or not the volunteers themselves want this sort of data will change over the next few months as they become more and more involved in creating a more robust data dashboard and custom reporting. So. These next steps, as I mentioned, are working with an Android app developer this summer and the volunteers themselves, improving the interface. Some things that have been suggested is the possibility of looking at two-way bicycle and pedestrian traffic, not just on the street segment itself. So looking at that sort of information, as well as engaging the volunteers in creating a robust data dashboard for web visualizations that really meets their needs and also allows them to communicate to the public, politicians, city agencies, what they are seeing on their streets and what they feel should be improved for pedestrian and bicycle safety as well as infrastructure. And thinking about this, web visualization dashboard, there are some things that I know personally that I think would be very valuable, is enabling the users to engage with the data as shown in Tableau Public, but being able to also have selected report filters, being able to choose bicycle versus pedestrian, that sort of thing, and also applying a custom search radius, thinking about the concept of a 10-minute walk or a 15-minute bike ride. 10-minute walk, we're usually talking about half a mile, 15-minute bike ride is roughly 3 miles, and these could be applied to, for example, there's a community center in which the neighborhood is being relocated to a new location. So what is the pedestrian traffic within a 10-minute walk of that community center? Is it accessible? Is there a significant amount of pedestrians? And looking at those sorts of improvements and applying that to the data so that users and volunteers can then have reasonable and supportive data to their initiatives. A good example of being able to have the option to filter data is Transportation Alternatives' own Crash Stat, which allows users to select a specific time period, select a street address, adding that additional functionality of a search radius, and also being able to select different factors and reporting filters. And then again, allowing users to have a custom report for download that has a standard branded format so that they have a way to communicate with the public clearly, concisely, and consistently in the same fashion. And then sharing these reports via common volunteer channels such as Google Groups, Facebook, and email with community boards, which is a frequent way for transportation advocates to really make change in New York City. Long-term opportunities, thinking about transportation planning, more fully utilizing the GPS capabilities of the app itself is really important. Starting to think about that 10-minute walk, that 15-minute bike ride, and transportation demand management strategies for existing points of interest or new developments. For example, if a university wants to minimize their need for parking, having students go out, monitoring traffic data, looking within a 10-minute search radius of the walk radius of the university itself, and then being able to say that pedestrians are using more frequently these streets. Let's apply transportation improvements such as improved pedestrian access, better sidewalks, that sort of thing. Where do we locate bike parking, for example, might be of concern. These sorts of strategies as part of reducing automobile use, especially in the case of parking demand in universities and large points of interest. And then also thinking about hotspots for pedestrian and bicycle traffic and the possibilities of future network analyses of looking at this information as there's more information added from the crowd, from participants, from volunteers. And in the longer term of the community engagement thing, I think it's really important coming as a planner that we engage communities not only in providing us with alternatives, but actually doing the data collection themselves. There's a personal investment in the process of both generating the information, analyzing it, and then coming up with solutions, and really bringing in a community engagement focus into transportation with utilizing collective data collection efforts, and tailoring the data reporting to meet the needs of these local experts, creating local experts in transportation planning, as well as strengthening community engagement and creating cohesive solutions where planners aren't suggesting ideas simply because of one traffic model when maybe things on the ground are viewed differently by those engaged in the community. And then opening the database itself up and the app to the public beyond just transportation alternatives volunteers and really bringing in more of the public in the engagement process. So I know that was really quick compared to some of the other presentations, but I will gladly take questions and suggestions. So, thank you.
I think your introduction of crowdsourcing into planning is going to panic a number of planners, and I think it's a good thing. You're gonna, just for the first time, I work with New York State DOT, and I had the opportunity to work through Hurricane Sandy, and it's the first time we've gotten a lot of crowdsourced data for things like gas stations.
Yeah.
So I think going forward, how are you going to use, how are you going to use crowdsourcing, which can change and be very variant, make sure the data is cleaned up, because public engagement in transportation projects has been a critical issue, because you may have the same group that always engages and never get the broader public. So in getting the broader public, you do increase some of the error or some of the misconception. How do you account for some of that? 'Cause I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, so some of the things I was thinking of is possibility, having, these counts, this is the raw information of counts, this is what people have contributed, but then if someone wants to look at that data, having an option to apply a conservative estimate, downsample the data to maybe 25 or 75% of what the resulting data is, and assume more conservative estimates. I think it's harder once we start asking users to log in and provide their personal information and link up to the system to actually have them continue to be involved in the project. And while I acknowledge that there might be users that tend to, would want to somehow sabotage the data collection process or make it seem as if there's more traffic than there actually is, I think it's been shown that in cases of, for example, Hurricane Sandy, OpenStreetMap, that usually those involved in developing the data and really care about the quality and the output. So looking at how to implement more of an open source way to check data information through the web online, I think would be very useful. Okay, I know you guys all want to get to the end, so thank you.